Let's get this show on the road, people. All right. There it is, straightforward. Allahu Akbar. Alright. إن الحمد لله وكفاه والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فسلام الله على القوم أهلا وسهلا بكم ومرحبا Juan Ying Leitze, bienvenidos a todos, Pacher Ragle, Khushamadid, and Swagatam people, Swagatam. So, what is going on? Michael, alright, Ahlan wa Sahlan, Mubin. Amir, Ahlan wa Sahlan, Marhaban bikum. Anisa, Ubaid, do you have to shower? Is this a rather interesting personal question being asked to me, Ubaid, just as I begin the show? Do I have to? That too before Fajr time. If you have had intercourse. Quite a bit of an interest being taken in my personal routine, I would say. Right, so, and then it's full stop and Ramadan has asked me the question. So I'm being asked by the month of Ramadan if I have to. Right, well, I take it, Ubaid. Alright, do you have to? You can delay the shower. You can relax, you can delay the shower. Relax yourself, okay. Relájate, cálmate. Right, okay, so we'll be discussing a little later on today the topic of should women come out of the closet? With our good friend Danny Boy. Daniel I don't know how to pronounce his surname, but Haqiqatjou. I think that's how. I think that, does that mean real Jew? I think that's what, I don't know. That's what it sounds like, Haqiqatjou, like reality Jew. Nevertheless, chalo, naam mein kya hai? What's in a name? A rose is still a rose, I guess. That's a bad example for this. I suppose cancer is still cancer. Yo, Danny boy, we're gonna come to you a little later on and discuss what fitan and fasad you are spreading throughout this by use of social media and by asking women to remain in the closet. But what's going on till then? Saudi Mufti, any more Saudi car bonnet or BDSM story? Toba. Hum to sharif log hain baba. I just simply relay the stories as they come to me. Okay, so I'm just allowing a conduit, people. That's innama ana conduit. I'm but a conduit. Okay, so let me share this with you. Somebody messaged me after last week's episode, messaged me on Snapchat, and you know when they try to guilt trip you, and they're trying these ones like, oh, I used to, Mufti, I used to follow you. You know, I recommended you to many of my friends. I told many people to watch you. So they begin with all of this. They're setting the scene. Scene set what I seen. So it's like, I used to do all of this. And before you did used to crack jokes, but now you've crossed all limits with your this week's episode. So this was last week's episode. You made jokes about the sphincter. Like, I'm sorry, is this the sphincter personified addressing me? Like, well, I'm sorry, why? Have I got a human colon that's made a Snapchat account and has contacted me? So this this avatar of the human colon was saying, you made jokes about the sphincter and about anal sex, and this is now too much. This one too much, you know, this one too much. This one cross all boundaries, you know. And like I said last week, people, beyond the sphincter, there is just kufr. There is just darkness and kufr. So according to this person, I had metaphorically, I had crossed the Rubicon, so to speak. So this person said, now I've had enough of you. You know, I can't believe you can crack jokes about this. And therefore, I just, I will never be recommending you to anybody anymore. And I will this. This is sounding like I don't know. Is this a relationship breaking down? I feel like I need to be in character and say, wait, I think we can make this work. Hold on. No. Oh, avatar of the human colon. We can make this. I can change. Maybe we can attend yoga classes where we can once again resume the strength in the colon. I'm sure there must be some solution out there. So he's like, I'm never gonna be watching your show. I'm never gonna be, And this was a guy, by the way. So I was like, my response was, sorry, who is this again? I had to respond by saying, sorry, who are you? And can you remind me who you are again? I have no idea who this is. So sometimes people give themselves too much value, you know, the value inflation. I'm like, mate, I got no idea who you are. You need to mellow out the drama. Yeah, right, because this is all right. This is all going on in your head, this saga. Right, so, yeah, so anyway, so I had that. I thought I'd share that with you guys. It's always interesting to see people's reaction. I mean, don't get me wrong. Look, my humor is twisted. I'll say that from the beginning. My humor is twisted. Hands up, people. Hands up, hands up, hands up, hands up. My humor is twisted. No, you know, people don't need to watch me. They don't need to, you know. I mean, some people will be like, that I find that funny. Some people will be like, I find it tolerable. Some people might be like, I find it interesting. Some people might be like, I find it disgusting. Some people, like this guy, might be like, not another joke about the the colon. But I think if you don't like something, don't watch it. Simple solution, people. Simplicity. You like it, you know, me gusta, I watch. You know, if I don't like it, right, no me gusta, that's it, I don't watch it. It's as simple as, look, if you're, relax, man, freedom, you know, freedom. So what else is going on, people? Let's take some. Was he a Saudi national? No, the Saudi thing, the Saudi thing is just it's epic it's of epic proportions. Yeah, salam. Saudi Arabia, huh? Saudi Arabia. So on the bright side, Saudi Arabia are making a little Las Vegas kind of island. So I think MBS is going to open that soon. So he's like, well, why don't we get all our Saudi millionaires, instead of spending their money over the weekend in Bahrain, you know, or in some of the other places in, let's say, close, the Emirates or whatever, why don't they come to this island where there's, they just got casinos galore, and it's a mini paradise basically. So, yep, so that's news about Saudi Arabia. But what else is going on, people? I'm trying to get to, yes, Sheikh al-Qom's picture has just come up. Let me just get to the post so I can answer some questions that have been, because some people have said to me, Mufti, you never I gotta share this later on, but this is what we'll be speaking about later on, people. That is a wardrobe, a cupboard by Daniel Haqiqatjou, and that's where his wife, proudly he's presenting where his wife now prays her salah in a cupboard. And they're boasting about it very proudly that this is they've revived the sunnah of stay in the closet, people. The sunnah, wardrobe, looking for Narnia. We're gonna come back to that a little later on. But people say that the questions they post, I haven't been answering them. So let's take some of them to begin with. What the hell? Let's get this show on the road, people, on the road. Right. Yay. Well, yeah, Muhsin Malik, what did I say? I don't know what that question even means. But opinion on Jami al-Karam. Huh? Look at that, a question. Opinion on Jami al-Karam. Is he proudly punishing her? These naughty games. Huh? Where are you? Where are you? ¿Dónde estás? Oh, I spy with my little in the cupboard. But that's gotta wait right now. The cupboard, Narnia has to wait, people. Let Narnia wait. Narnia. Let's take some questions. Abdul Rahim Jumye has asked a question: can a woman change her surname to her husband's when she gets married without affecting her relationship with her father? So I've answered this on many occasions before. Look, you can change your surnames, you can change, this is more a cultural practice nowadays. So in some parts of the world, people do it. I gave the example of Pakistan, that in Pakistan, it is a common custom for a woman to adopt the husband's surname. Now, or sometimes they adopt the husband's first name. I mean, Pakistan and names are like, it's an absolute mishmash. It's a roller coaster. There is no there is no method to the madness. It's just chaos theory applied. So names in Pakistani communities, as an example, mean nothing. So you have a name and that's it. Your surname may not even be your surname. So you may have, for example, your dad's first name as a surname. You may have your dad's surname as your surname. You may do. That actually is very seldom happens because we don't have surnames per se. We have generic names like Khan, Ahmed, Hussein, Mahmoud. These names are not really, they don't belong to a family, they just belong to anybody's got them. So, you know, and so we have names like that. Or you might have your dad's first name as your surname. So that might happen. Or, so let's say your dad's name is Sajid Hussein. You might have the name as Muhammad Sajid, which would be weird because then Muhammad, nobody's going to call you Muhammad. They call you by your dad's first name. Or you might be Muhammad Hussein. So like this. And then Pakistanis within the same family name different kids different surnames. So it's just like the feel, like what do we feel? They just go with the flow. There isn't even a flow. It's just some kind of meandering going on. So they might call this one, like I said, they might call this child, let's say there's a name like I said, like let's say you've got a name like a common name like Khan with a surname Khan. So they might say, okay, this person's name is Abid Khan, let's say. Now the next son, they might just call him a generic, a kind of like a double barrel name that sounds nice, like Zain al-Abidin. Like they might just say, so Zain is his first name and Abidin becomes his surname. And then they might name the third son something like Muhammad Iqbal. So now you might have Muhammad gets written as his first name and Iqbal becomes his surname. So you've got three boys, let's say, all with different surnames who are all brothers, and the dad's got an entirely different surname. And then the girls in the family, they'll give them a different generic surname, like, I don't know, like nowadays I suppose less so B, like they used to give B, Begum, Parveen is a common one, Kausar is a common one, so they might say like Salma Kausar, they might say like you know, Sumaya Parveen, like, so these kind of names, they will just add generic. So everybody in the family's got a different surname. And the mother might have the surname as the first name of the father. To really make it into a mishmash. So there's no consistency. The only consistency is the lack of consistency. Right, so you can imagine in that culture, a woman taking the husband's surname means nothing, because it's not like her first surname meant anything anyway. Because her first surname was just like Parveen, or B, or Begum, or Khanum, or Kausar, or... That said, some families do. There are some families that now do want to systematize and have a regular surname. So they might say, this is our family surname. So a person might choose his grandfather or his father and set that name as a surname. Then all the siblings will all use that as a surname. Then all their children will use that as a surname. So there are some people trying this now. But my point is that, look, if you want to adopt the surname, there's la haraj. Okay, la junaha alaykum. It is la ba's, people, la ba's. It's all good. It's all good. Right, so, but if you don't want to, and you want to retain your name, that's absolutely fine as well. Either ways, it's all good. Oh, right, the comments had paused. For the second time, that is true, and if he just called his brother mentally ill, for instance. I don't know what that is. Please, can you explain the difference between Qur'anic recitations, asim, hafs, evangelicals use it to claim the Qur'an was corrupted. Waqar, that's a very good question. I've answered this previously. I think there's a lot of misunderstandings surrounding the Quran. Many of these misunderstandings are truly a result of our own doing, whether it's our direct doing or maybe the few generations before us, and we have perpetuated and continued that that mistake. So what's happened is the Quran, the true nature of the Quran, is not how many people understand it today. So many Muslims today, because since colonialism, many Muslims, in order to stand up against the colonial West, what they started to say was things like, your Bible is corrupted, our Quran is perfect, which, fine. But then they started to say things like, our Quran, everywhere you go, the Quran's always been like this, the Quran has, which is fine overall, but they took it to the extent of saying things like, every vowel, every letter will never be different in any version of the Quran. And you see, the problem with this was those Muslims that were saying these arguments, either they were just zealously blind with their kind of argument, that they forgot about this in the moment, or they were just really sheltered Muslims that only lived in their community and only saw their community throughout their lifetimes. And that makes a lot of sense. In the past, people weren't so internationally traveling. There wasn't social media, there wasn't international transport. So people, like let's say you lived in India, you only really saw just India. And that too, not even the whole of India, but your region of India pretty much. You may, in your lifetime, engage with some foreigners if they came in contact with you, but you wouldn't travel the world. So you don't really know what's going on in Mali with the Muslims over there. You don't know what's going on with the Muslims in China. You don't know about the Muslims in Bosnia, for example, or the Muslims in East Africa. You've never really met or even seen what their culture is like. So to you, there's an understanding that all Muslims are like this. And you have to remember that Hajj was becoming a revived practice, a revived sunnah in the time of colonial kind of times. Prior to that, Hajj had been abandoned for a few centuries almost. So, I mean, not entirely abandoned, but pretty much abandoned due to danger and other things. So now, when Muslims started to say things like, no vowel of the Quran is different, everything is the same, everything is the same, that helped for the moment. You see, what you did was you saw a leak. Let's say there was a leak in the roof, and you stuck a plaster or some sellotape to kind of block this leak. And then what's happened is you've passed that sellotape, so to speak, or these kind of plasters onto those people who came after you. They've repeatedly done the same. The problem with this is not a real solution to the leaking roof. What you ought to do is undo this kind of temporary, a very, very momentary kind of response, and you ought to kind of build and fix, in this case, fix the roof where it's leaking. You ought to fix the problem, provide a detailed solution. Now, Muslims for a few generations reinforced this idea. The problem with this was that although it's helped Muslims of that generation in saying, yes, we've got it, it is us, unaltered, nothing altered. When it reached our time, and we've got books upon books with people having written this, now with social media and readily available Islam, diverse Islam, all these other readings have manifested of the Quran, and they are practiced in certain parts of the world. So now some Muslims have found themselves dumbfounded, like what do we do? And the truth was that that was never true, what those people said. Okay, the truth is the Quran was revealed with a certain amount of fluidity when it was revealed. Now, that sounds quite strange to us now because we've become so settled with this understanding of utter micro permanence and immutability. So because of that, we find this strange. But when the Quran was revealed, there was a level of kind of fluidity as it was being revealed during the lifetime of the Prophet. And then it settled in the ways that it settled. And the only best examples I can give of this is like where people were saying, and this is a really poor analogy, it's not a good analogy, but it's the best I can think of to try to make some sense to you. It's like saying English. If English, the way Americans would have certain usages that we wouldn't in the UK, and how maybe Australians would have certain usage that we wouldn't over here, and how if we said something they would replace it with their words or they would use similar words. This is the kind of understanding. So then what's happened is after the Prophet's time, this fluidity was there. But with Uthman radiallahu an, he narrowed it down. I mean, it was the first narrowing attempt was with Abu Bakr radiallahu an, who turned the Quran into a book form, which we call a mushaf. Then with Uthman, who narrowed it with a single script. Okay, now these languages, Arabic is called an abjad language. I mean, abjad is actually, ironically, this is taken from Arabic, this is a term used in philology and study of languages for those languages which don't have diacritical kind of markings, so that you can't see the vowels on them. And you have other languages that will have their vowels present as you write them. So what you read is as you pronounce, and Indo-European to some extent does, some of them don't. Like Urdu is an abjad language, but Hindi actually has its vowels written with it. So it's so my point of saying this is when you lock in a script but don't have vowels, there could be different ways of reading it. So when we write letters, we don't know exactly how to read it. Now the Arabs just had a flow, and some people read it slightly different, and they just all went with it. Asim and all these people, that you're going to get that started to, whether it's going to be from the time of Nafi or people, whether it's going to be Qalun or any of these kind of people who took the Quran, all it was that their style of reading just became popular. This is not mutawatir in the way people, this is not what people say. Like, people have turned their reading into something like this is it. This is that all it was that just became the popular way of reading the Quran. And Hafs through Asim became a popular way which people kind of made a very formal version, and we have that today popularly. I mean, other people have Warsh from Nafi, and there's other recitations as well, but my point is they are all just ways of being able to read the Quran. Does it change subtle meanings? It does change subtle meanings. Does it change? It does change certain letters at times. It changes subtle pronunciations at times. It doesn't have any drastic, overly, like such a macro shift in meaning, but that was the dynamic and fluid nature of the Quran, which if we accepted that from the beginning, we would never have had a problem. But it was only because of our colonial past that those scholars who did it with good intention, but they set out a path which was actually inaccurate, and we all walked down it. So that's why. So I hope that helps. Okay, so the Quran does have some fluidity to it. How strong is the argument of oral tradition as proof? What does that mean as... I'm not sure what that exactly means. What about the things called ijaza? Ijaza is simply transmitting, like you give somebody permission. It's like a license. I give you the license to teach this. In the Quran, we do have ijaza. I mean, I have ijaza in the Quran. Like, I read the whole Quran to somebody who'd read it to his teacher, right back to the Prophet. Now, that said, that doesn't mean the Quran has to be transmitted through ijaza. It doesn't. This is just a kind of scholastic heritage that we just have. It's like a part of the legacy, the tradition. We do it more for tradition purposes and to show that we've gone to these lengths to do this. It's not something which is necessary. How can I stop to mess up my head by wondering what is haram and halal all the time and going online? That's a very interesting question. I think, look, you have to not be OCD, not kind of have all this super waswasa going on. In my understanding, I would say that, look, things in Islam by default are always permissible, unless proven to the contrary. So, to prove something is haram, you need overwhelming, clear-cut evidence that is conclusive. That's how many of the scholars in the past operated. That's how I operate. So that's what I generally teach people. That said, if you have a ruling and you can just go with what your kind of heart is inclined to. If you came across an opinion and you felt that, look, that opinion resonates with me, you can go with that. There's nothing wrong about this. You know, these rulings, people, these rulings are not bigger than the religion. The deen was here to connect people with God. These rulings are important, but they are not the end of everything. Because there's ikhtilaf in everything. I'm telling you, there is ikhtilaf in every opinion almost. Almost, okay. So it's just that you might not know it, that's all. Somebody's asked for an explanation of Moses speaking to God through the burning bush. I've explained this previously. I have also explained in previous sessions how Jabal al-Tur was a volcano in northwest Africa, and the burning bush was a result of fumes, volcanic fumes that kind of there are these fume emissions that perpetually remain on fire. I mean, at least for several, whether it can be several days or things like this. Now, that's what the burning bush was, most likely. Now, as to things like how did Musa alayhi salam speak to God, we don't know. But he obviously heard something, and he heard this. Was this an actual thing out there heard through the aural, faculties, or was this inside his head that he was hearing it? However it was, we just truly do not know. When you coming to Copenhagen? Alright, inshallah, why not? Psychedelic experience, why not? Right, let's take some questions that people have put on here as well. I almost forgot, people. I almost forgot. तुझको पाने का ये मसला है, तुझको खोने के वसवसे रहेंगे. Allah, 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 Allah. That's the, what was it? सब मौसम तेरे दस्तरस में है, तूने चाहा तो हम हरे रहेंगे. Allah, Allah, Allah. If you want, it is only by your desire that we will remain forever green. He says, that's a new poet I've been listening to a bit, Tahzeeb Hafi. I like his style, you know. The guy has got some style. Alright, I gotta say, people, I gotta say. Somebody said, what happened to last week's Monday Night Live? I can't see it on YouTube. It should be on YouTube. I'll check it out. I will check it out, people. Could you please tell me what is the meaning of mighfar? It is in the context. Its context is changed in Asian countries and people are spreading nonsense based on it. Mighfar. I'm not sure. I mean, my understanding, I don't know the context in which Imran Amjad is asking this question, but mighfar in Arabic generally was like a helmet kind of thing that was worn on the head, and people usually, I suppose the Arabs kind of tied like a turban around it, if you like, sometimes, and that's my understanding, the mighfar. When standing at graves, Uthman radiallahu anh would weep until his beard was wet when he asked. I've answered this previously, has Jamrak. Alright. Wait a minute, I've answered these before. If shaitan is as best simply an insinuation, I've answered this in just 2 weeks ago in detail. A hadith indicates that some women will have heads that look like the humps of camel. And they will never enter paradise. Because you can't have deformed people walking around in paradise with heads, like with a hump on their head, like a camel. I mean, that'll hardly look like a paradise, will it? With deformed people walking around. Because of this, please clarify the meaning of this hadith. This hadith is not actually a sahih hadith. That this hadith is to do with the end of times and to do with women having a certain style of, which is silly really, because it makes no difference. Let's think about it rationally. What difference does this make if a woman has, I don't know, like braided her hair, or if she has a ponytail, or if she has it as, wears it as a kind of bun on her head? What difference does that make? I mean, apart from a style difference. The style difference. I mean, what difference does it make? It's like, here's a girl now. So she's braided her hair. Yeah, she's got a plait. She's got this kind of braid. So everything's okay. Then she puts it as a ponytail. Things are okay. And then she wraps that as a bun. And the wrath of God strikes down upon her with great vengeance. Ah, eternal damnation. You're going to hell. I mean, what the hell is that about? I mean, what kind of a ridiculous, absurd statement would that be? So it's not, come on, God's not going to go all berserks because a woman has tied her hair on top of her head. So that makes no sense whatsoever. And I explained previously, there's a very famous hadith that women towards the end of time, and I believe this is also part of that hadith in some narration. Maybe this is an isolated narration as well, but as part of that narration, there is a hadith that there will be women towards the end of time, that they will be dressed as though they're not dressed, al-ariyat, al-kasiyat, al-ma'ilat, al-mumilat, and they'll sway and they'll have these, and they'll have clothes, but it's as though it's as though they are naked. I mean, they're not naked, but it's as though. This is the hadith, and that and it mentions these kind of things, that their hair will be like this, and that they will hold on to certain kind of, whips or something. And I know people are getting all kinds of images now. We're kind of like, all the men in the room are like, Yeah. Of course, Imam Sahib. So and it mentions these things, that they will not smell the fragrance of Jannah, and they will be from the hellfire, and blah 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 blah. And this is a narration from Abu Hurairah radiallahu an, saying the Prophet said this. Aha! But, and I've exposed this previously, this is also a narration which comes from Ka'b al-Ahbar, saying, I have read in the Jewish Bible, it said, and the exact same narration. And Ka'b al-Ahbar was one of the teachers who influenced with his teachings Abu Hurairah radiallahu an. So you can easily see that, look, sometimes it could be that maybe either people listening to Abu Hurairah mix things up later on. So people sitting in... So imagine Abu Hurairah sat here today and he transmitted 10 hadith in a row. Let's say. He did 10 hadith and then he just transmitted two statements to admonish people. Like kind of preacher statements, which he heard from Ka'b al-Ahbar, let's say. Now, he said, oh, and the Prophet said this, and the Prophet said this, and the Prophet said... And, by the way, a time will come when women will be dressed like this, and they will be doing this, and they won't smell the fragrance of Jannah. Now, it could be that he never said at that point that the Prophet said this, but the people listening couldn't make a distinction, because they've just heard 10 narrations of the Prophet saying this, and then they've heard him saying this. So they've just assumed this is also said by the Prophet. It could be that the mistake is from him as well, that he made a mistake and he mixed up certain narrations. Or it could be other people. I mean, but the point is the Prophet did not say these things. These things are all Israeliyat, all Jewish or Judeo-Christian sources. That's where they come from. So there's nothing, this style of women wearing a kind of like a camel hump just sounds a bit dodgy, doesn't it? Nevertheless, it's not haram. Look, in all honesty, a guy isn't going to go totally mad because the woman has her hijab as the shape of a camel hump. Like, a guy's not going to be like, everything's normal. Oh my God, beast mode, Neanderthal, I cannot control myself. I have seen the camel hump, the camel hump. So we can relax. It's nothing, these kind of things are clearly made up, as you can see. Okay, so, right. Does reciting Ayatul Kursi and then blowing on the house doors save the house from being burgled? Is this a practice from the Sunnah? Burglar proof. This door is burglar proof, but the thieves, the burglars are going to come through the window though. So the burglar says to the house owner, do you know why we didn't come through your door? Because you obviously read Ayatul Kursi on it. Had of you not read Ayatul Kursi, we would have kicked the door in and we would have come through the door. But because you read Ayatul Kursi, we just came through the window instead. This kind of innocence is kind of sweet, this kind of cute. This one cute, It's like if you call out an alarm company and they charge you all these, a few £100 to set up something, and they just turn up and they just go, like he just begins, and he goes, Allahu la ilaha illa. He just blows on the, that'll be £399 only. Don't worry. This one covered now. This one now protected. You know? You're like, does that protection have like a subscription? Does it have to be renewed, or is this like unlimited protection, or is this like just? And the worst part is they say it's only 24 hours. So you have to do it every day. So the power of God has an expiry date. The word of God is strong. It can prevent burglars, but only up to 24 hours. then this one too much. You know, now you over 24 hours. You naughty. You must repeat the prescription. You know, so you're like, but why does it expire? No, only 24 hours. You know, this one. Right, so the burglar is outside like this. Burglar's like, all right, lads, we just got 5 minutes to go. Quickly, let's finish that last cigarette. So, all right, lads, Ayatul Kursi has now expired. Let's go in. And they're like, well, sorry, mate, your Ayatul Kursi expired. How have you repeated it? Then clearly we wouldn't have been able to end. But so these things aren't really, you see, and the problem with this is, I'll tell you the problem with this stuff. There's no harm in just reading Ayatul Kursi or reading any verses of the Quran and kind of, you know, for yourself, to kind of assure yourself, or to kind of have it as a blessing. You know, this is really folklore religion. Like, it's what I suppose common people will do, but it's not really in the essence of the religion, but people will do it anyway. There's no big deal. Like, if somebody said, look, I recite these things, fine. If they help you, and these things on a mental level can help. But the problem with this is that it can lead to a culture of superstition, right? Where there is Sayyid Mia, right? Absolutely, there is no Osman, ahlan sahlan, ahlan sahlan. You see, it can lead to a culture of superstition. Now, somebody could feel that, oh my God, today I forgot to kind of blow on the house. I don't know how you blow on an entire house, by the way. I mean, unless it's a miniature version. Right, so this one can also be misconstrued, you know. Hey, blow on me. This one could be misconstrued at the Pir Sahib, you know. I said blow me and not, I said blow on me. There was an on. You know, this one misconstrued, Pir Sahib. This one, you take this into extortion, you know. This one not nice, you know. So this, but I don't know how you could blow on the whole house, but let's say you go around blowing, right, all over the house or on the doors, on the points of entry and exit. That is hilarious though, on the points of entry. But you blow there, let's say on the windows, all the windows in the house, and it could breed a culture of superstition where if you don't do that someday, you might feel like, oh my God, now I'm going to get burgled because I haven't blown on the windows, or I haven't. And let's say God forbid that you did something horrible happened, like you got, or somebody smashed your window, or somebody did get burgled, let's say, God forbid. Now, in that circumstance, if they hadn't prayed this, they might think, oh, this is my fault because I didn't pray the... So, do you see how this then becomes a reinforced superstition? So I think this is why I advise against this kind of stuff. Right, so that Yasir al-Hanafi who does intellectual masturbation, what the hell? He blocked me. ZD? Kya kar rahe ho, baba? I read out your thing. Chalo. You see, so I've seen a post by Maulvi Makari, Maulvi Makari, our good old friend, Father Gonzalez, right? So, Father Gonzalez, those of you who know him, Yasir al-Hanafi, did a post where he shared a video which I already responded to last week about Mufti Abu Layth insulting Imam Nawawi and saying homosexuality is permissible. First of all, I've explained all of that, so it's useless me saying that again. In summary, I did say some scholars have said homosexuality was permissible. I didn't say I'm saying it, and I didn't say that the majority. I actually clearly said the majority didn't. However, I do feel that ikhtilaf, if some people took it, they took it. It's up to them. I don't have to agree with them, but I can't stop people from saying, no, you can never act by that position. Like, if some people took it, if they took it, they took it. I mean, it doesn't mean I have to take the position. It doesn't mean you have to take the position. It doesn't mean Father Gonzalez has to come out of the closet. But what it means is that look, there are people out there who are homosexual and they are Muslim. Now, at the end of the day, if that's them, that's them. What can we do about these kind of things? There's nothing we can do. Now, you can keep saying to them, look, but if they did say that, yes, there are some opinions, I quoted Qadi Yahya ibn Aktham and other scholars of the past, that didn't consider homosexuality haram, and they used verses of the Quran to justify it. If these people were following them, fine. I mean, if it made their life work, I don't have to agree with their conclusion. I don't have to agree with their thing. But what difference does it make to me? That was my point. And in all honesty, these guys, I'm just saying, these people like Maulvi Makari and these people, I wouldn't be surprised. All these people who are incredibly homophobic, I wouldn't be surprised if deep down they have homosexual kind of inclinations. Because this is scientifically proven, right? I'm not saying, look, I'm not, no, I'm not saying this. This is science. Science is saying this. That there's been studies on many priests, Christian priests. And by the way, Maulvi Makari, Father Gonzalez and other people like him who are incredibly homophobic, who have this strong intense that they have to keep reminding the world that they hate homosexuals. Like, yeah, today I must remind the world again how much I hate homosexuals. It's like, okay, bro, why this urge? But anyway, there's a test that has been conducted that many people did. So there was a test in America in the Bible Belt with a lot of priests where they applied a small apparatus, these small electronic nodes to the area down there, the special area, And what they did is they showed them just images of homosexual pornography. So they showed these priests images of homosexual porn, and they just flicked through, and they showed normal people as well, like normal men. This was mainly, I believe it was mainly with men. It may have had women as well. And what they did was the electronic nodes that they've got attached down there, they can sense micro kind of stimulation that wouldn't normally, so it wouldn't be like a full erection, but it would start tingling, a little tingling down there, a little subtle. So, and most of the priests who were incredibly homophobic demonstrated they had a reactionary stimulation. So basically their downstairs was saying when they were looking at the image, "You're teasing me, you naughty." These, I would guarantee, I would bet that most of these Mulvis that are incredibly, expressively, passionately homophobic, most of them, right, would trigger stimulation on, if they were brave enough to take this test, maybe we can facilitate. Maybe we can get in touch to get this research conducted, and we will undertake the costs if Maulvi Makari or these people are prepared to take this test. And I guarantee you, we would find very interesting results, you know. Es muy interesante. Because I'm pretty sure, you know, that's what's bothering these people. That they see, you know, it's like Carl Jung would say, that those people who hate something passionately, it's usually something that reminds them of a part of themselves that they're hating. This, so that's my, so if Maulvi Makri does watch this, Father Gonzalez, forgive us our Father, for we have sinned. But my second request is, if you are interested, maybe I can reach out to some of those scientists, and we can maybe arrange for the funds to be covered if you participate, you know. All in the name of research, people. Research. This is no pleasure. I'm not saying he's going to be looking at those homosexual images with pleasure. It's only research. Research, people. Anyway, right. So, are a man for the prayers accepted if he prays at home? Can you imagine Maulvi Makri on Jeremy Kyle taking a homo lie test? That would be hilarious. That would be hilarious. Right. If you had to pick one, would you stick to Brailwi Sharif or Deoband? You know, look, I say we don't need to pick. There are many great people. I've got teachers in both areas and amongst Salafis. I've actually been to all three institutes. And I have friends and followers and teachers and associates like that I would, from all these groups. You know, the group isn't, I mean, I don't agree with group mentality and I don't support groups, but the group isn't the issue. It isn't, what I'm trying to say is a group is an issue, but it's not collective guilt. It's not like anybody who's a Brailwi has to be a dimwit or has to be like this, or anybody who's a Deobandi has to be a kind of caveman or something like that. It's not like that. But the problem is some voices amongst these people are incredibly cancerous to Islam and our day and age. And it's that mindset that needs to be challenged. So I'm not here to eliminate or Deoband or Brailwi Sharif or any of these places. And I wouldn't, that wouldn't even cross my mind. And I wouldn't be interested. If somebody said to me, I'm a Deobandi, I have no problem with that. Somebody said to me, I'm a Brailwi, I have no problem with that. I mean, I do personally have I wouldn't want to be in a group or a sect, because in a group, you always have groupthink. It does not matter. It's as Nietzsche said, that look, he said, insanity is the exception in individuals, but the norm in groups. Groupthink is always insane, because it's about control, it's about things like that. I wouldn't want to be part, I wouldn't advise people to be passionately part of a cult, but that's not the issue here. The issue is this mentality needs to change. And a lot of these Maulvis are realizing that they're becoming more and more irrelevant. And with the day and age, and younger people today can't even relate to them at all. They can't relate even, forget to younger people, they can't even relate to the normal person outside of their immediate cave. So this is the issue. So they have a choice. Either they change or they sink the ship. You know, it's as the poet says that Kuch na ban saka to dubo denge safina. You know, if nothing else, then I'm telling you, I will sink the ship. He says, Kuch na ban saka, to dabo denge safina. Sahil ki kasam minnate tufana karenge. That he says that we won't bow down to the storm. Although this poem is in a courageous light, but they say we'll sink the ship. Now, so many of these people are happy to sink the ship of Islam just so long as they don't have to compromise. And amongst them are people in some ways like Daniel Haqiqatjou, who's not really a trained scholar of Islam, but nevertheless they like him because he can speak English and he's Western and he's been to Harvard and things like this. And it's amazing, anybody that kind of toes their line on anything, they will absolutely praise. So, so for example, when it comes to me, they will attack me for, let's say, my beard. Now that's old news, but they used to once upon a time. But they could find somebody else clean shaven or with a very small beard, but he toes that line and then all of a sudden he's fine. So tribalism, tribalism. So my tribe, good. Your tribe, no good. This. So this is the problem. You see, there is this hadith, right? Somebody's asked me about this hadith of Ahnaf ibn Qais that he says, I went to help somebody and presumably it was to fight for Sayyidina Ali, and he said to him that, look, the Prophet said, go back, for the Prophet said if two Muslims meet with their swords, then both the fighter and the one who is being fought are both in the hellfire. Now, I would think these kind of meanings are valid in Islam. What that means is this is a kind of warning to it's to deter, a deterrent, to kind of stop people from having fights and doing things. So these kind of teachings that, look, you're both in the wrong, like just stop it, like if you're fighting, don't fight. That is the main message behind this. So I am in support of that. I do support that kind of understanding. Right, somebody had mentioned on the issue of Marcus Aurelius, not the ancient Marcus Aurelius, but from Facebook has mentioned that I agree with your take on the 15th of Sha'ban, but here's a video clip of weak hadith by Mufti Mangera, Mufti Abdul Rahman Mangera. Now look, using weak hadith, I don't agree with it, right? Generally speaking, unless I did say in my video clip, look, if people want to celebrate the 15th of Sha'ban, they can do. Right, they can do. There's no big deal with that. But I just feel you shouldn't guilt trip people who don't do it, because really not doing it is the position of the Sunnah. It is what the Prophet. Sorry, I was just laughing at. I heard something, but it is what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the companions. It would have been their position that they didn't celebrate these things. These are just weak hadith. Now, if you want to use it for your personal use, this is a bit like cannabis. Weak hadith are like cannabis. That's what I would say. I mean, they're not haram. Personal use, religiously, I don't think would be that much of an issue. But intent to supply, this one is a problem, So this is the problem, that preaching it and pushing it forward, I think, is the main issue with these things. So if a person wants to do it, they can. I don't see any big deal with that. Was Abu Hanifa incompetent in the field of hadith? Astaghfirullah. No, Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah was not incompetent. He was a great, look, Imam Abu Hanifa was a legend. the Hanafis today, the majority, not all, but the majority of the Hanafis today are a disappointment, and really are traitors. It's a harsh word. Okay, I'll reel that one back in, right? But they have betrayed the Imam. Put it like that. Maybe unknowingly, maybe a lot of them unknowingly, but they've kind of betrayed his legacy of free thinking, of critical thought, of ease, of a deen of ease, of all these things. They really kind of gone against him. They've really bigged up other people, especially Latter-day Saints, the Church of Latter-day Saints. It's a bit like that, really. You know, people like Ibn Abidin. Ibn Abidin is up there. You know, he was like from approximately about, give or take, 200 years ago. His Fatawa, Raddul Muhtar, is given quasi-divine status almost in Hanafi fiqh. It doesn't matter what Imam Abu Hanifa had to say. This man's personality is what defines a lot of modern day Hanafi fiqh. And obviously people before him as well. I'm not saying Ibn Abidin himself changed everything, but he was like the seal. He was the cement that concretized this Frankenstein version of Hanafi fiqh. Now, so, yeah, I mean, but Imam Abu Hanifa was a legend himself. Absolutely. One of my heroes, Imam Abu Hanifa. And I feel that, you know, personally feel my way of thinking is very much in line with Imam Abu Hanifa's style. You know, that's what I think. But obviously, many Hanafis will disagree. But I think if Imam Abu Hanifa was alive today, he and I would hit it off proper. That's what I think. That's chalo. And what I think is what matters to me. Sound like a proper insane person there. You know, I knew this person once who was going through some difficulty. He was sectioned. And this isn't a story about me, by the way. You know when people say, oh, I had a friend. I have a friend. And then they're talking about them. And the friend wants to get married, right? But, so, I had this, I knew this person and he was sectioned once in a mental psych ward. So, he was caught in some crime. And him and some other people, and then he took the mental, you know, like, let's play mental. He took that angle. And the other person with him didn't, and they just, I don't know if there were 2 or 3 people with him, but whatever, but they all got done, right, they all got done for some crime, and they went in for a few years to prison. They all got released, but this guy that I knew, he had pleaded kind of, he never pleaded, but he set himself up to look insane kind of thing. So he got sectioned, and the interesting thing was that, you see, he was perfectly fine. In fact, he was a very intelligent guy. I mean, he was a chilled, like a chiller, you know, like somebody, he wasn't like, you know, somebody you can imagine would get into trouble, but he was very intelligent though, very sharp, and very kind of young lad. And so first of all, he tried to fight the medication, and they zombify you when you're there. You know, they give you this medication, because I once visited him, and he was like a zombie. He was like, kind of, you know, like, and he could speak, but you could see the delay in reaction time. But his behavior was good generally, and he, you know, did all the courses they told him, and he was due to be, like, he was up for whatever they call it, their version of parole, whatever. So he was up for that. And when he went to the board, they asked him, like, you know, like, what do you have to say for yourself? And he said to them, look, I'd like to say that, look, I'm not mentally insane. And, you know, I'm okay. And look, I've been doing my courses, I've been to college, and I've done this, and I've done this. And they said, sorry, that you see, your problem is that you don't accept that you're insane. So I mean, I'm laughing at it, but it's a tragedy. So what happened is he then got rejected. Then he went again, like I think you could only apply every 6 months or something. He applied again, and they said like, well, no, sorry, you don't, the problem is you don't accept that you're insane. So he did that like, you did that like 2 or 3 times. Then what he did is he switched strategy. So he said to them that, oh, right, look, I accept. He said that I've actually acknowledged that I have mental health issues. But I can see that I've worked with them and stuff like this. And so they said, oh, well done. See, now you accept that you have mental health issues, that you're insane. So now this is all more of a reason to keep you here so we can work with you to improve you. Oh my God. Oh my God. That was so... And then eventually they did release him, but what a horrific thing. Like, you see, if you tell them you're not insane, they say you're insane for not recognizing you're insane. And if you say you are insane, they say, oh, well, that justifies you being here. It's horrific, man. Wow. Ya salam, ya salam. Right, so they did keep him in longer. Eventually, I mean, I think they kept him in probably another year or something. Then they released him eventually. But he had... the point of that was he had spent double the time locked up what his codees had spent for doing the initial crime, because the insanity thing was just crazy. Anyway, so what else is going on, people? About the 40 hadith, are they important to learn? Eddie from Switzerland. Alright, Eddie, you're doing it. Right, look, 40 hadith is just a nice number. There are certain hadith which are mainly weak, but that the Prophet said, whosoever memorized 40 of my hadith. But I think the meaning, you see that this is an example of using weak hadith. I think the meaning of trying to say, look, why don't you commit, it's a nice easy number, commit it to memory. Like, why don't you learn 40 hadith of the Prophet? I think, see now, using, even if you didn't have that hadith, let's say, but memorizing the hadith of the Prophet would be a nice thing anyway. So here's something to give you a nice round number, 40. So that's absolutely fine. I think things like that, even though it's not such a, the hadith may have problems to it, but it's a nice thing to do, to memorize the hadith of the Prophet. So a lot of scholars have authored several books about 40 hadith. Mufti, did you study at Al-Azhar? I did some very brief kind of training courses when I went there to Al-Azhar that were arranged in their fatwa kind of thing. So, but that's it really. And I've benefited from the mashayikh of Al-Azhar. I am in touch with a few of them, some of the muftis there who run, who are one of, some of them who are the head of the fatwa faculty and who deal especially with international liaisons and things like that. So, yep. Can we talk about women just staying home? When performing salah, can you recite the du'as and the Qur'an in your mind, or does it have to be recited verbally? Right, now this is an interesting one. When you're praying, how do you recite? Do you go like... or do you just go... Look, there's no... Generally, people would read something. So they would probably be reading like... They usually kind of will silently verbalize the kind of actions. So it's like a silent recitation. So they will be reading. So if it's like... But it's not an actual reading. You understand? If you did read it on your own, that's fine. You can read it aloud. You can read it quietly to yourself. You can read it like that. You can be saying like, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Rahman Rahim, Maliki Madhab. You can do all of that, that's fine. But if you're reading with people, it depends. I mean, if you're just reading recitation, I suppose, but other things might be disturbing other people around you. Like if you're praying, the person next to you is praying, and you're doing it might be distracting for the other person. So I think that's not a good thing to do. Yeah, I mean, you can, somebody said, Chaudhry Usman said, but you can at least hear your own voice. Yeah, I mean, you can do these things. My point is more about not being, inconveniencing others around you. That's more my point. John Snow asks, does the Qarawiyyin have an alim course and Mufti Maliki course? The Qarawiyyin was an amazing institute. I think there are some efforts to try to revive some of the faculties and things there. Otherwise, in the last few decades, Qarawiyyin seems to have suffered and almost died a tragic ilmi death. But there are still scholars there. But the question is, like, you know, there are very forward-thinking scholars in Tunis as well. I mean, in Tunisia, the Diwan al-Ifta, the Fatwa Council with Sheikh Boutayyikh. I think he was the head. I don't know if he still is, but they had given some very challenging fatwa, like and very contemporary and very like things like that inheritance is the same regardless of gender. That was a recent fatwa. Was it last year or the year before given by them? They've given quite a few fatwa that are very radical and of the age, and they gave the fatwa about women can marry of their choice, that they, even the restriction from the state shouldn't be a statutory restriction. So they gave the fatwa saying that the state shouldn't impose even religion on, like if a woman wanted to marry a Christian, let's say, that's her personal choice. Whether we agree with it or not from a religious point of view, there's debate. But my point is, what their point was, that the state shouldn't enforce that upon the women when it doesn't enforce it on the men. So that was their point. So they do give some very interesting fatwa. AK Alo has asked 2 questions. Is sports gambling permissible? Question 2. In the Infancy Gospels, it states that Jesus blew into a clay bird that came alive. Right, okay, so... Right, so... First of all, let's take the biblical... The Infancy Gospels of Thomas, isn't it, I believe? That, by the way, is not the same as the Gospel of Thomas. So there is the Infancy Gospel, and there is the Gospel of Thomas as well. Now, generally, the Infancy Gospel is considered to be apocryphal, right? So it's unreliable by Christian sources, and they feel that it was just influenced and stories made up, and that people added to them. It may have, I don't know. You see, I have said previously about Jesus blowing into the birds of clay and bringing them to life. What was this? So I have mentioned that, look, we don't fully understand that. There's certain explanations. One explanation is that this is simply a metaphor. It is a parable, because Jesus would speak in parables. So when we say things like he made the blind see, or he brought the dead back to life, or he brought birds that were clay and made them into living birds that could fly away, that this was all a parable because Jesus spoke in parables. He was one of the few prophets who ever spoke in parables. And this is what he was doing, as in a parable, for this is what his people had become locked in. It was like they were a clay of a bird that had no real use, but his teaching of the good news, hence the gospel, which just means the good news, was not only to animate it and bring it to life, but it would liberate it and it could fly away. This is how some of the scholars have understood this, like Maulana Abdul Karim al-Athari in his tafsir. I think that is a nice understanding. The other understanding would mean that would mean that it was a literal, we take it literally. In that case, if you did take it literally, it still wouldn't have a supernatural understanding to it. There would be some explanation. So when you're saying things like the people were dead, you would be saying that they were perceptibly dead, but not actually dead. So people, for example, who may have had a very low kind of pulse and things like this, perceptibly dead, but Jesus assisted them, and there's only two people, Lazarus, and you're going to get one other incident. You're not going to get many cases of Jesus bringing the dead back to life. So that's there, and the blind as well, that he healed them. According to some theories, you see, Jesus had travelled in his early age. That's a theory, once again, by certain Christian sources as well, and certain Buddhist sources, that he travelled to the Buddhist regions and studied with them, and then came back. Now, according to some of these theories, that Jesus learnt certain meditation techniques and certain kind of Eastern healing methods that weren't popular in the Middle East. So things like I'm not saying it was, but like Reiki and things like this that are very Eastern, where people heal with they have certain methods. So there's a theory, I'm not saying this is what it was, but there's a theory that Jesus had picked up certain healing techniques and healing methods whilst he was away. And then when he returned, he had these practices. He also, his whole thing about patience and was very kind of Buddhist-like too. So this is those people who are inclined to that theory. There is a book about this. I do have it actually somewhere. No, it's not here somewhere. I thought it might just be around here. If I did have it, I mean, I've got it definitely, but I might have put it away over there. So that goes through the essays of, if you look at it's on Amazon as well, the life of Isa, but they spell it as I think is it ISSA, because the Buddhist records state that a man came from the west to them, who had the name Isa, and he was a young lad, and he spent many years with them, with the Buddhist monks. So there were these records that were found in the 19th century and things like this. Nevertheless, these are some suggestions. The point is, whatever it wasn't something supernatural. Is tarot card reading forbidden? You see, tarot card reading, the problem isn't the cards. The problem isn't just, giving out the cards and reading them. The problem is the belief and the superstition. If somebody isn't going to be impacted, and they're doing it for a laugh, and they're very sure of themselves, that's fine. It wouldn't be haram in that sense, but the problem is many people get very influenced by this, and then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, it's really interesting actually. I don't know if I've mentioned this previously. Imagine you wrote a book, or imagine somebody wrote a book about you. Right now, in this book, they said that. So let's just say they wrote a book about me, but I'm giving you this as a thought experiment. So this is about you, and somebody said that, in this book they write that, the future you contacted this person, travelled in time, and told him that, look, you are to become in the future, let's say it's me, I'm to become a mufti. and I will end up giving lessons and doing live Q&As and doing these kind of things and teaching people, and I will be known for strange opinions. Or it might say in your book that, you know, you become a teacher or an accountant or a doctor, or you run a company, or you work in a shop, or there's something about you. Or you decide to get married late, or you decide to get married early. Now imagine it mentions these things. Now you read this book. Now by reading it, you end up thinking, like, I know inspired is a strong word, but that kind of triggers your actions to do it. Like, imagine I read and I think, well, oh, that's interesting, a mufti. And now I do go and become a mufti. Or you do read that and you think, get married early. And then you actually do get married early. Or late. What I'm trying to say is which triggered which, and by that understanding, could you lend some legitimacy to this person saying that, oh, in the future the person came and told him that you would be doing this? Or imagine he never said the future something, he just said, I prophesize this. But you reading the prophecy, it thereby triggers your subconscious to do it. Now this isn't just, by the way, what I'm saying is not just a load of hot air. If you think of like H.G. Wells and his book on the atom bomb. Now, during the early 20th century, when atomic things were becoming quite the vogue, they were becoming the thing. Everybody was into the future is going to be all about this kind of the atomic stuff, the structures. When uranium was kind of really being explored and its facilities were coming forward, and the decades that led into the kind of research, what does uranium kind of, what can it do, and what kind of properties does it have, and how come it leaves this kind of glow, and why is it so unstable? And you see, during this time and in the run-up to World War II, during this time, Wells writes a book in which he describes that the people in the future have what he terms an atom bomb. Now, when he's writing this book, nobody has an atom bomb. This idea, I mean, I don't know, but documented, this idea doesn't exist. Documented. I'm not saying no human may have had the idea. Obviously, he's had it. He's writing it as a story. But he's writing this just as a tale of fiction. He says that in the future, atomic things are so whatever in use, and everybody's using atomic nuclear energy, atomic energy, and humans have what is called an atom bomb. This book then influences the readers. So people like Szilard, who read this, become to think, they are influenced to believe that the Germans, not only can this be made, but they think the Germans are actually onto making an atom bomb. So Szilard, who lacks a certain amount of influence, he gets in touch. He wants to warn the Americans and tell them that they should be doing something, because if the Nazis develop this atom bomb, the world is screwed. So what he comes up with, like he doesn't have any influence on the president of the US or anything, but he reaches out to Einstein, because as a fellow scientist, who then writes to the White House, triggering the whole Los Alamos and the whole kind of project, that the Manhattan Project that they set up to make the atom bomb. It then later emerges that Germany had no plan and had no atom bomb. There wasn't no lab, and there was no experiment, and there was no project. Szilard tries to stop the American government from going ahead, but he's obviously sidelined. He protests, and the Americans go ahead and continue to create what is the world's first atom bomb. And then that leads to them needing to test it. And in reaction to Pearl Harbor, you have Hiroshima. And then a few days later, Nagasaki. Now the whole thing, like what I'm trying to say is, if you take this story of what Wells wrote about the atom bomb, he wrote it as a matter of fiction. But that fiction changed the world as we know it today. The entire world will never be the same now. Because some people reading that believe that, oh, actually we could make an atom bomb. And so this is one of those amazing paradoxes where fiction is influencing reality, which is influencing fiction, which is influencing reality. And it's amazing. I mean, it's so amazingly, you know, it's so kind of overwhelming to think about, but it is how this world, I mean, just think about that, people. Think about it. So with tarot cards, I know I kind of went off track, but what I was trying to say is, if you read, like if they tell you something like you're gonna die, or somebody close to you will die, or somebody, you know, or something tragic, that might lead you to creating a very dangerous mindset in which you might actually become self-destructive, if you understand what I'm saying. Right, so about the gambling thing, I've mentioned before that, look, gambling is haram for the reasons that are self-evident. It's haram because it's a highly destructive force. It's haram because it's something which, even you could take the UK as an example, or any country you live in. Just Google the gambling debts in that country. They're ridiculous, horrendous. It destroys families, destroys homes, destroys lives. I know some people, and I've come across several other cases of people who I've come to know, but not personally, but just know them through a kind of semi-professional atmosphere, that who have struggled with gambling, and their relationships have broken down, and they've lost their homes and families. And so gambling is haram for that reason. It's just, Islam made it haram as a safeguarding measure. Does that apply to all kinds of gambling? In my understanding, these things like playing lotto or scratch cards, or you know, playing the national lottery, for example. Although I don't personally do any of these things. I don't play the national lottery. I've never played the national lottery. I don't think I've ever played any kind of lottery. I may have some point, you know, I can't recall it, but maybe some point in life I bought some scratch cards or something. But I'm not inclined that way as a person so much. But my point is, the reason I mentioned that is just in case people say, oh, you know, he's saying this to justify his own whims and desires, right? I'm not. And I'm not an advocate of gambling. But that said, I don't feel at that level these things are haram. I feel this was speaking about gambling as it's done in casinos or amongst people privately, but on that level where it becomes this kind of or where it can lead to this whole series of a lifestyle choice. Not this you know, buying a raffle ticket or buying a scratch card or playing the national lottery, spending £1 or whatever it costs nowadays, I don't know. But that's not what it's, in my understanding, these things are not haram. Or if people put together some money for a good cause and they said, look, let's have the winner takes it all. I don't believe that's haram. Okay. The president of Sudan claimed the Maliki Madhab allows the ruler to kill 30% of a population to maintain leadership. Can you comment on this, Luqman Fiaz? You see, I don't know he said that, but he probably would have said it for, obviously, South Sudan and Darfur. That's why he probably said it. Look, I think these things are a tragedy. First of all, just touching up on the Maliki issue, that I believe there is a ruling of Lakhmi within the Maliki Madhab who said that based on Masalih Mursala, if a person was, if you were on a ship and you had to basically chuck off 1/3 to save 2/3, he said it's okay. He felt, Al-Lakhmi, who is a great faqih of Maliki Madhab. You can't actually see up there, but on that shelf up there, there's a book of his in many volumes, the Tabsirah, which is a rated, authoritative work within the Maliki Madhab. Now, he's also one of the 4 people who Khalil relies upon in his Mukhtasar. Now, you see, I'm not saying, obviously I don't agree with, I'm not that you can kill people, I don't agree with that at all. But what I'm trying to say is I can see where he was trying to come from. He was trying to say that, look, the whole ship is going to sink. If a certain amount of people, you let them slip, you could save the majority. Now, logically, that kind of makes sense logically, that you'd rather save, you know, the greatest, the greatest good for the greatest number. But the problem here would be, well, that's okay so long as I'm not on the sinking side. I'm not amongst that 1/3 that they're going to chuck into the sea. Then it's all good. So this is the question: who do you bloody chuck into the sea? Like, who's going to get it? I suppose you could gamble. So that's Lakhmi's thing. Lakhmi never said that the ruler could kill. He never said that. His scenario is to do the ship. That said, people in the past would have said these kind of things. So many, so for example, for people like Aurangzeb or the Mughals or the great Mughals of India, Akbar and, you know, Shah Jahan and all these great Jahangir and these kings, and the Ottoman rulers, that people did give rulings saying, look, it's okay for the Ra'iyah to be sacrificed for the Sultan, you know. Sultan salamat rahe, you know, it's like, so long as the king is all good, we're all good. Obviously, these kind of fatwas were bizarre, but they were issued. Some of the Hanbalis gave the Ottomans fatwa saying it's permissible for them to commit fratricide, to kill their brothers, to prevent greater fitna. Brotherly love, you know, this one, agape, you know, this one. So this is right, this is the point of what I'm trying to say here. So about Sudan, I think, look, I don't know about the politics of Sudan, I'm not an expert on it, but I do know that they had immense issues in Darfur. They had issues with South Sudan being Christian. And I think it's a shame that we as Muslims and other faiths cannot coexist. You know, I was watching a documentary a few weeks ago and they said, well, that... Was it Nigeria or was it... no, sorry, not Nigeria. It was a different African country, not Nigeria, sorry. But they were basing it on Nigeria as one of the... It was a different African country that was starting to have a rising Muslim presence, but it wasn't a majority, but they had like a steady presence in the country. So Muslims were something like 20%, 25% in the country. And the majority of the country was Christian. And the documentary was saying that, that some of the locals have a concern because they feel that Islam, Muslims, don't coexist well with Christians. And they were giving examples of Nigeria and other countries and saying that, look, whenever Muslims exist in a country as a clear, substantial presence in the country, they seem to become intolerant of other, especially things like Christianity. And I don't know if that's true. I'd like to believe it's not. But it was disheartening to hear, you know, like I heard it, and obviously this was the public that they were questioning, and the researchers were saying this, but it was very sad to see that this is the understanding of Islam, that even with other books of other faiths of the book, that are so close to us, that we have a history with, that who, the Christian kings who gave sanctuary to the Prophet and his message, and the early companions of Islam, in order for Islam to survive, that people of this faith today feel that we have an intolerance to them. And unfortunately, in some cases, we do. Sri Lanka is a fine, tragic example of that recently with the bombings, and it's a sad. This is another very sad story. That's all. So, may Allah, Yasir Allah, Yasir Allah. Mufti, are you on steads? No, man. This is that. It's dal roti, pure dal roti going on. Right, so okay, so right, guys, shall we get to this Daniel? Let's get to Daniel Haqiqatjou. Right, let's get to his post. So basically, people, what's happened? Right, I made that post today saying I'm going to be speaking about. Amongst the topics will include Daniel Haqiqatjou and women praying in the wardrobe. But what I told somebody to do, but they couldn't do it because I was kind of preoccupied, I wanted to put up some pictures of Malm. Malm, IKEA also use Malm as a kind of a brand that they have. So Malm is my hashtag of Mufti Abu Layth, Maliki, Al-Maliki. So I wanted to get some Malm wardrobes from IKEA and put them up in the pictures. So this is so despicable, honestly. Honestly, I find this so... You know what it is? It's not the... Okay, so what's happened is, here's a picture. Right, if those of you that can see it, right, you can probably see it better there. It's like inside a kind of closet. You can see some clothes hung up in the background, and you can see a prayer mat on the floor. Now, if you saw that picture on its own, there'd be nothing to it. However, Danny boy, our Daniel Haqiqatjou, right, for somebody who's quite... very anti everything, and anti everything Jewish conspiracy and this. It's just an interesting name, that's all. Haqiqatjou. I walked by the closet in my home this morning and I was surprised. I was surprised because there was a prayer mat there. Apparently my wife, Khalid, dare I say her name due to modesty. If I mentioned her name, that would be of a loose character, loose character, So we always never mention women's names, right? Just a dumb thing. But anyway, that's his own person. That's not the problem. Khalid had been praying in the closet. Oh, rather. This was news to me, because she doesn't typically pray there. Turns out she is reviving an amazing sunnah. Allah. The Prophet ﷺ said, a woman's prayer in her room is better than her prayer in her courtyard, and her prayer in her closet is better than her prayer in her room. Another hadith reports that Humayd came to the Prophet. She said, O Messenger of Allah, I like to pray with you. He is reported to have said, I know that you like to pray with me, but your prayer in your room is better for you than your prayer in the courtyard. And your prayer in your courtyard is better for you than your praying in your house. And your prayer in your house is better for you than your prayer in the mosque. And your prayer in the mosque is better than your prayer in my mosque. So she issued orders that a prayer place be prepared for her in the furthest part and the darkest part of her house, and she used to pray there until she met Allah, e.g. died. I need a drink, right? So let's get this clear what Daniel is saying here. What Daniel is saying is that one, it is a sunnah, a teaching of the Prophet for women to pray in closets, in wardrobes and cupboards. Right. Two, it is better for her to pray in her closet than to pray in the Prophet's mosque. So the Prophet's mosque is less virtuous for her than her wonderful wardrobe of Narnia. Right. So this is according to Ustad Shaykh al-Islam, Allamatul Waqt, Faqih al-Asr, Daniel Haqiqatjou. Right. So this is the claim that so for women, they don't need to pray in the Prophet's mosque. They just need to pray in wardrobes. They should stay in their hotel room, climb into the cupboard, and they should just pray there. So first of all, apart from the fact that these hadith are ridiculously weak, unacceptable, absurd, clash with the teaching of the Prophet, clash with the practice of the Prophet and his wives, they clash with the hadiths in the other books, Sahih Muslim, Sahih Bukhari, they go against the lifetime of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the clear teachings in the Quran that do not show any of these kind of distinctions. Right? Not only that, many of these reports, like I mentioned, are either fabricated or weak. Right? But let's just stop there before we even get into... I'd like to go over some of these reports, but before we even get into that, I want to mention something. Where did he get this term closet? I want to just pause here, right? The Arabic term, right? The Arabic term is makhda', right? So him saying a woman praying in the closet, right? Some kind of wardrobe or some kind of cupboard, right? First of all, just shows his level of Arabic. This is the person who is so intelligent that he thinks a makhda' is some kind of a closet that women had back then. Okay. He is, secondly, then assuming this closet is part of the Sunnah teachings. So let me tell you, in the past, the houses of the way people had them, they called a general house a bait. Okay, a house or a dar. And that had a hujra in it, which would usually, not always, but often be like a kind of front room. That would be the sitting area and the kind of part of the courtyard. That would kind of extend. It was a private where people would often be. Then you had the internal part of the house, which was called the bait. They may have cooked here, they may have kept things, they may have... And then they had a bedroom. Right. Now that section which was set off for the bedroom was usually called a makhda. Okay. Or they describe it as a baytun saghir dakhil al-bayt al-kabir. Like a small inner quarters within a larger residence. This was called a makhda. Okay. Now it is not a closet that people had. You could, even if he said the term chambers, he could have said chambers, but not a closet. It's not a cupboard. And the reason they were dark was not because they used to darken them, that I know, let's climb inside the wardrobe and shut the door. It's because, as Aisha radiallahu anha says in the hadith, which is sahih, وَالْبُيُوتْ لَيْسَتْ فِيهَا مَسَابِيحْ يَوْمَئِذ. In that day and age, the homes of people didn't have lamps in them. So people never had lamps, And so naturally, because the actual sleeping quarters was right in one corner and at a distant location, it would naturally, not always, but often maybe dark. For sleeping purposes, makes sense. So that's why. It's not because they would say, oh, let's all get in the dark and do things like this. Okay. Now, so I just wanted to clear this up. So he has no idea what a makhda is. And this goes back to those of you, by the way, those of you that know the famous, you probably won't know the poem, but Musaylim al-Kadhab, for example, in that famous poem where he marries that the prophetess, the famous, she's also a false prophet. What's her name? Sajah al-Taghlibiyya. So okay, those of you that don't know, there was after the prophet, there was this, obviously there were many false prophets that emerged during the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, amongst them Musaylama, who's referred to as Musaylim al-Kadhab, but there were other people as well. And so amongst them was Sajah al-Taghlibiyya, this woman who emerged as a prophet. She said she was a prophet, and she had people, she had a following. She was from I believe the Yamama region, Yamama not Yomama, but which is around the Najd region of Arabia. So it's always the Najdis in it. On a side note, it's always Najd where the problems are coming from. And this is why the Prophet said in the hadith that Najd will always have will cause problems. But so she emerges from that region of Najd, and she had a following. So she meets up with Musaylim al-Kadhab. So the fake, she was claiming to be a prophet, female prophet, and Musaylima claiming to be a prophet. They met up and they have this kind of negotiation. So he proposes marriage to her. And before he proposes marriage, she says that what is being revealed to you or something. So he reads these kind of verses about, don't you see how God saying, don't you see how we made women pregnant and how we made them. So he reads a lot of verses to do with pregnancy, and maybe she was a bit broody at the time because he does a lot of this, and then he proposes marriage. He says to her that, what, how about we marry? And she says, well, Sajah Taghlibiyya says, all right, that one, all right. She was also a bit naughty, because he reads this poem to her, where he says, what do you say? She says, yes. So he says, all right, قومي إلى النيك فقد هيئ لك المضجع. He says that, he says, get ready for some naughty, so that's actually the term for sex. So in Arabic, but not naughty, but with neek. So he says, قومي إلى النيك فقد هيئ لك المضجع فإن شئت في البيت وإن شئت في المخدع. And he says that, if you want, he says, it's time come. If you want, in the Bayt, which was the main property area, the main house area, or وَإِن شِئْتِ فِي الْمَخْدَعِ, or if you want, in the chambers. Obviously, he wasn't saying if you want, let's get in the cupboard. Although that would have been an interesting take. If you want, in the cupboard, should we get in the cupboard? Wonderful world of Narnia. So he says, وَإِن شِئْتِ فِي الْمَخْدَعِ وَإِن شِئْتِ سَلَقْنَاكِ وَإِن شِئْتِ عَلَى أَرْبَعٍ وَإِن شِئْتِ بِثُلُثَيْهِ وَإِن شِئْتِ بِهِ أَجْمَعٍ. It's a very naughty poem of it's actually used in a lot of the Arabic books to explain words, what they actually mean, believe it or not. I actually came across it probably about 19 years ago when I was memorizing the Quran to do with the verse salaquka, the salaq, to do what does this verb mean? Salaq, to kind of like lay out, to spread out. So, and part of the evidence that many poets, many linguists like Raghib al-Asfahani and other people will use is this poem, that وَإِن شِئْتِ سَلَقْنَاكِ, and if you want, we'll lay you out. Here it gets naughty, you know, this one X-rated poetry. وَإِنْ شِئْتِ عَلَى أَرْبَعٍ, and he says, and if you want, we're going to go on all fours. So that's the actual wording of the poem. And then he finishes it by saying, and this is the kind of poetry that people just very blasé, they just mention, by the way. So you learn all this stuff whilst you're learning Arabic and learning, so you're like, huh? And he says, and if you want, I'll and if you talk about boasting, he's like, and if you want, I'll only use 2/3. And if you want, I'll use the whole of it. And so, and then her famous response was actually, no, I'll go with the whole of it. She says that was revealed to me. So that was the actual story. I'm not making that up. That was the story of Sajah al-Taghlabiyya and Musaylim al-Kadhab. But anyway, we digress, as we often do, right? Coming back from the word makhda', right? So makhda' didn't mean a closet. Although many of these, you know, these strongly homophobic people, that's where they may be. Allahu A'lam. Allahu A'lam. Anyway, nevertheless, right, so let's take a look at what was the problem with what Daniel was quoting. First of all, you have to understand that there are sahih hadith, many sahih hadith, of women attending the prayers. There's sahih hadith of the Prophet saying that salah in my masjid, in this masjid, is more virtuous than anything, any salah anywhere. And then in the riwayat, in some riwayat, except in the Haram, except in Mecca. Now, this hadith completely destroys that. That's to say, well, oh no, the Prophet was saying that no, not for women, it isn't. Right, so it goes against that which is a Sahih hadith. It goes against the hadith that many women would come in Sahih Bukhari, they would leave Fajr Salah, and some of the people describing say, oh, we used to see the women going and we couldn't, it was still dark, we couldn't even tell who was who, that's when we used to pray Fajr. Now, what were those women doing? Why were they leaving the virtuous act? Why does the Sahih Hadith in Sahih Bukhari say, لا تمنعوا إماء الله المساجد? Do not prevent women from going to the mosque. And if people are going to quote what Aisha radiallahu anha said, that, oh, if the Prophet knew what women would do today, then he would have prevented them from going to the mosque. Look, Aisha radiallahu anha may have said something like that as a statement. She didn't forcibly prevent any woman from going to the mosque. She didn't. And the Prophet would have had the insight. If you mean, you know, like some scholar, like Ibn Hazm has a whole article, has a whole section dedicated in his Muhalla to this, where he point after point goes through this and says, well, when you say things have gone bad, how have they gone bad? What, you mean like zina? He says, are you saying zina didn't used to happen in the time of the Prophet? He says that, are you saying that there wasn't, you know, if you're going to say, oh no, men might be groping women or doing, are you saying this didn't happen in the time of the Prophet? That there was nothing like this going on? There's plenty of hadith like this going on. Are you saying that men and women weren't having affairs in the time of the Prophet? Of course they were. Some of them even approached the Prophet. Are you saying there weren't hypocrites and people like that around in the time of the Prophet? Of course they were. So Ibn Hazm spends several paragraphs arguing this with several points, that what are you saying that wasn't there at the time of the Prophet when you're saying this? Now, you're also walking away from many of these Sahih teachings. You're in essence saying that these women had a virtue, like, so let's say, for example, I could do something that's more virtuous, or I could do something that's less virtuous. And those women that are coming to the mosque are doing something less virtuous. They're rejecting what is more virtuous. And yet nobody is telling them, whoa, 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 wait a minute, what are you guys doing here? You ought to be just at home. Yet we see even after the Prophet, during the time of Umar radiallahu an, even in the time of Sayyidina Ali radiallahu an, that they had allotted imams. They had even said Sayyidina Ali radiallahu an, Ibn Hazm brings a transmission as well, that he had set up an imam just for women in the masjid. So he says, وَمِن طَرِيقِ عَرْفَ جَاءَ عَنْ عَلِي بْنِ أَبِي طَالِبٍ كَانَ يَأْمُرُ النَّاسِ بِالْقِيَامِ فِي رَمَضَانِ فَيَجْعَلُ لِلرِّجَالِ إِمَامًا وَلِلنِّسَاءِ إِمَامًا. The Sayyidina Ali would have an imam for the men and an imam for the women. And Afraja says, فَأَمْرَنِي فَأَمَمْتُ النِّسَاءِ, that I used to lead the women in salah. Now, there used to be a whole entrance for women in the masjid, which Sayyidina Umar facilitated, in the whole thing of Babun Nisa. What was this? What were they? Is this just a makruh action? Because isn't this makruh then? Leaving something that is much more virtuous than praying in the Prophet's mosque even. According to that absurd, ridiculous narration that Daniel has presented, for the woman to pray in any mosque is better than her, that is closer to her home, is better than for her to pray in the Prophet's mosque. Completely devaluing the mosque of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Typical of these Wahhabis. I'm telling you, I mean, I'm not just saying this stereotypically, like, I mean, I don't mean to generalize against, because not all Salafis will make such absurd statements about praying in closets. Imam Malik said, rahimahullah, that the masjid of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to us as Muslims, is the most virtuous place on earth, above the Kaaba. For Malikis, to us, Medina is above Mecca. Right? That is how the Maliki Madhab has been. That is how Imam Malik taught us. That is how Qadi Abu Bakr ibn Arabi, Ibn Abdul Bar, all these people present it, Ibn Rushd. Now, some of the Malikis may disagree, but the Maliki Madhab has always been that the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ to us is more virtuous than the Kaaba and more virtuous than any place on earth. As an Islamic association, why? Because that is where the Messenger of Allah ﷺ lays. Now, how can you say, what an absurd, ridiculous statement to say for women, any local masjid, so long as it's in an alleyway close to their home, is more virtuous than the Prophet's mosque for them. Just because the address is a bit closer to where they live. This is an affront. This is ridiculous. Right? So, and these narrations, just to, whilst, I'm on that, these narrations that he brings, Ibn Hazm and these other people demonstrate, these scholars, that these narrations are actually mawdu'. Right? They are utterly fabricated and or extremely weak. Now and do you know something? Ibn Umar radiallahu anh, this is in Sahih Muslim, Ibn Umar had a discussion with his son Bilal, and his son said, I'm going to stop my wife from going to the mosque. And he said, no, the Prophet said you're not allowed to stop women from going to the mosque. His son said, no, I'm going to stop her anyway. In that narration in Sahih Muslim, it says he swore to his son so bad that the person says, I'd never heard Ibn Umar ever swear that bad. He said to him, I told you that the Prophet of God said something, and you're telling me that, you're like, but I'm going to stop her anyway. Right. So this is now, but let's take a look at these narrations that he's bringing. Okay. Right. Okay. Now I'm just trying to bring them up, so we just go through them quickly. Okay. So. Right. So here's one. أخرج البيهقي وابن أبي شيبة عن عبد الحميد بن المنذر ابن أبي حميد الساعدي عن أبيه, who's his father, by the way. Munzir ibn Abi Humayd is unknown. We don't even know who he is. عن جدته, from his grandmother Humayd, that she said, the Messenger of Allah said, we love our salah with you. So they said to him, فَيَمْنَعُنَا أَزْوَاجُنَا, our husbands stop us from praying. And the Prophet said, صَلَاتُكُنَّ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ خَيْرٌ مِّن صَلَاتِكُنَّ فِي دُورِكُنَّ. So your salah is better internally in your homes, is better than in your courtyards or the extended house, which is then better. Your courtyards are better than praying in the masjid. This hadith is mawdu', fabricated, okay, as Ibn Hazm said. Then there's a narration in Ahmad and in Abu Dawood and Ibn Khuzaymah and Al-Hakim from Walid ibn Abdullah ibn Jumayr, who is da'if, right, okay, from his grandmother Layla bint Malik, who is unknown. Who is Layla bint Malik? La nadri. Who is Layla bint Malik? We don't know who she is. From Abdurrahman ibn Khallad al-Ansari, who is majhul. We don't even know who this person is, Abdurrahman al-Ansari. From Waraqa. Okay, so this is the another one that they use. But this one, right, okay. Let's move on to the other one, another popular one that they use. From transmitted by Ahmad, from Dawood ibn Qais, from Abdullah ibn Suwaid al-Ansari, al-Khutami, not al-Harithi. By the way, there's two of these people. From his aunt, Imra'atu Abi Humayd as-Sa'idi, that she came to the Prophet, and the Prophet said the same thing. And he said, look, I know that you love praying with me, but your prayer in your house is better than your prayer in your front part of your house, which is better than the prayer in your house, which is better than the prayer in the masjid of your people, which is then better than the prayer in my mosque. The hadith that he used. And then she commanded, so they made a prayer area for her in the farthest area of her home and the darkest. And she used to pray in it until she met Allah. لا نعلم. So first of all, this Dawood from Ibn Suwaid. Where does it say that he's ever actually heard a transmission from him? Where is there sama'? No sama'. Okay. So ليس له في الكتب التسعة رواية إلا هذه. This is the only narration he has in the 9 books of hadith. Okay. And Abdullah ibn Suwaid al-Ansari is not al-Harithi, the Sahabi, which some people confused him for. Bukhari mentions him, Abu Hatim mentioned him, but they don't mention that he's a thiqa. So who is he? He remains majhul. And they're going to say, well, Ibn Hibban mentioned him in the thiqat, but that's because Ibn Hibban does tawthi'. He just puts many majahil, people who've not transmitted, people who've only had one transmitter from them, for example, he puts them in his book of thiqat. Ibn Khuzaymah brings a riwayah on Abdullah ibn Ja'far ibn Najih al-Sa'di, who is da'if and munkar al-hadith jiddan. He's munkar, right? This person, unaccepted. And he himself says, وَفِي الْقَلْبِ مِنْهُ شَيْءٍ, that I'm very doubtful about this person. Then he says Muhammad ibn Amr, who is problematic if he's transmitting from Abi Salma. And guess who is transmitting from here? Abi Salma, you got it. From Abu Huraira, that he said that إِنَّ أَحَبَّ صَلَاةٍ تُصَلِّيهَا الْمَرْأَةِ إِلَى اللَّهِ أَن تُصَلِّي فِي أَشَدِّ مَكَانٍ مِّن بَيْتِهَا ظُلْمًا. The best prayer to pray for a woman is in the darkest area of her home. هذا حديث موضوع, fabricated hadith. Ibn Khuzaymah himself titles this chapter of the hadith باب اختيار صلاة المرأة في بيتها على صلاتها في المسجد إن ثبت الخبر. He says that, it's better for a woman to pray in her in her home than the masjid, if this is sahih. Putting a question mark there. And he doesn't normally do things like that, by the way. So then you've got a narration from Amr ibn al-Harith, that Darraj and Abu Samah, who's matruk al-riwayah, who narrates from Sa'ib Mawla Salma, who's majhul, and Salma Zawj al-Nabi, that the best prayer of women is in the depths of their home. Then you have another riwayah from Habib ibn Abi Thabit, which is munqati' an Ibn Umar. Then you have a narration from Ibrahim ibn Muslim al-Hijri, who is da'if, an Abil Ahwas, an Abdullah. the similar kind of narration. Okay. Now in this, right, okay, and you've got, right, Ibn Khuzaymah mentions in his transmission of this narration, وَإِنَّمَا شَكَّكْتُ فِي صِحَّتِهِ لَأَنِّي لَا أَقِفُ عَلَى سَمَاعِ قَتَادَةَ هذا الخبر من مورق. So he himself says that Qatada, who is a major mudallis by the way, I don't believe that he has actually even heard from this transmitter Muwarriq. So, and you've got some transmissions from Qatada, who is, I've mentioned in the past, transmits many from many people without actually ever hearing from them. It's just, he does tadlis. Then you've got a transmission in Tabrani in his Awsat from Zayd ibn Muhajir ibn Qunfudh, who's majhul, from Salma. This is a khabrun batil, as Ibn Hazm and others have said. Then you've got one in Tabrani in his Kabir, which is transmitted by Ibn al-Lahi'a, who is unacceptable once again. Then you've got in the Sunnah of Bayhaqi min Tariq Da'if, once again from Muhammad ibn Abd al-Rahman ibn Abi Labiba, who's weak, Da'ifun Jiddan. Then you've got a narration from Jarir ibn Ayyub, who is a wadda', who used to fabricate hadith from Abu Zur'a. You see, people, look, we can go on and on with these narrations. These narrations are either fabricated or very weak. They clash with the Sahih hadith, they clash with the seerah of the Prophet. So the seerah that we know in the Prophet's lifetime, women used to attend the Prophet's mosque. That's where they used to pray. They don't have to attend, but they could, and they did. Now the Prophet would say to them, guys, look, I'm seeing that you're coming here every day. For God's sake, it's more virtuous to pray at home. He never ever said that. And the Prophet taught in Sahih Hadith that his masjid is the most virtuous to pray in. And there is the riwayah that except in Makkah, and I did mention, according to Imam Malik, no. But that it generally, Medina is always better. But that's a different discussion. But for people to say, you know, for a woman, her cupboard or her wardrobe or her closet or some dark corner, switch off the lights, is better than the Masjid al-Nabi, right, is absurd. Absurd. And this is what happens when you take this deen without having studied it. This is what happens when you have a personality disorder that is like a control freak, kind of control freak paranoia, where you have issues of control and are using religion to justify it. You know, many insecurity. You'll find many people, they'll use religion as their biggest shield. Now, I've read a post by Daniel saying, what is it with Muslims today trying to... He put this up, I think it was today. Somebody shared it with me when I mentioned I'm going to speak about him. Saying, what is it with Muslims today saying, oh, the Prophet was a feminist, or the Islam is about supporting feminism and this and that, and billions of Muslims for... You know, billions of Muslims for centuries had no issues with this for 1400 years, and today you have an issue. First of all, what billions of Muslims have you been reading? I mean, you, first of all, don't even understand the term makhda', right? Your Arabic is clearly in question. I don't know if that's, you know, some kind of an understanding issue, but from what I have looked into, I don't believe that you're actually a graduate of any Islamic sciences, as in having studied to a scholarly level within Islam. I'm not saying you haven't studied at Harvard. I'm sure you have. But from an Islamic perspective, I'm unaware of your hadith studies and these kind of things. So, what 1400 years are you talking about? Which madhab are you talking about? Does that include, does the 1400 years include the Prophet? Because in the Prophet's time, the women came to the masjid. You know, does it include Umar? Because in his time, he had a whole thing set up for women in the masjid. Does it include Ali? Because in his time, he had an imam for women in the masjid. Does it include these Sahaba radiallahu anhum? Does it include Imam Malik's time when he's never said this? He's living in Medina. Does it include him? Does it include Abu Hanifa, who never said things like this? Does it include the Salaf, who never taught these kind of ridiculous teachings? So when you're saying that, 1400 years of a legacy, who are these 1400 years? Where do you get this from? Which are these, which books are you referring to that are telling you that we for 1400 years have had monotonously all women praying inside wardrobes or cupboards or locked up or praying behind barriers? Or where? Go to masjids throughout the world. They've had women always praying in some madhabs. They've been more restrictive, in others they haven't. Shafi'i masjids, Maliki masjids, Hanbali masjids have always had women praying in them. You can go to any part of that. In fact, so this is, this kind of thing, for 1400 years Islam has been against. What version of Islam? Is it like the Salafi publications version? Is it like Darus Salam? I don't know what kind of glossy petrol dollar books that you've been reading nowadays. When you say 1400 years of Islam, what can you name me a traditional classical book of one of the madhabs that you actually study, that you actually go through, that you actually, whose fatwa are you referring to here? Because everything I've quoted generally about dissents is all from these fatwa. You wouldn't he said, today people are trying to suck up to be compassionate. Imam Burzuli was Shaykhul Islam of his era from 600 years ago in Northwest Africa. He has his fatwa book, a major faqih within the Maliki Madhab. He said capital punishment and all hudud would be substituted with new financial penalties in his day and age. Is he part of your 1400 years of legacy? The practice, the amaliyat continued in Northwest Africa upon his fatwa amongst many communities. Ibn Ardun said wives would inherit 50% of the husband's division. Are these kind of radical feminist fatwa part of your 1400 years of legacy? Like, what is this 1400 years of legacy? When you say, women must be doing this, women can't travel outside, they can't go on their own. He said, what is this? Abul Walid al-Baji from Muslim Spain, who said that 1,000 years ago, what's wrong with women traveling when they go in caravans from city to city? He said, so long as they're safe. What is the issue? Is he part of your 1400 years of legacy? Who is this this 1400 years, who are you even talking about? So these things, this is why when I read these kind of statements and they appeal to certain people who hate their version of modern Muslims, like they're going to say, Islam should never be modern. But the irony is, look, here is a person who uses the West as to say, look, I'm educated in Harvard, I am an authority, you ought to be listening to me. To then say, Muslims really ought to be like living in caves. He's not saying that word for word, but that's what it becomes like. Basically, the best understanding of Islam is that which resonates with the Taliban, for example, is his best version of Islam. Or maybe in ISIS territory with 1-2 notches higher, less in extreme, that's all. You think, but you're using everything Western, like your own credentials are simply just Western credentials. That you went to Harvard, that because you appear presentable, because you can speak English, right, more than these Mulvis, they give you a platform or they share your things. So it's ironic, subhanallah. We have to remember, look, people, I'm going to leave, is that the time? I'm going to leave us with this final message I just want us to ponder over. Look, we have to understand that Islam, it came for all times. Now, with the day and age, with the people, things would evolve. Now, I want you to just understand something. Check this out, people. The whole human race, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ was approximately under 210 million people. That means today, let me give you an example. That means today, Pakistan, as an example, is around probably about 205 million people. That means that the people of Pakistan, as an example today, the population of Pakistan was the population of the entire planet Earth of human beings in the time of the Prophet. Right. Arabian Peninsula had no more. It had between probably 100 to 200,000 people. That's all. That means if you took the UK today, a town like Dudley would probably have more people living in it. Or like Derby, if you took Derby, or these small areas like small kind of, I don't know if they're towns or cities, but probably cities, some of them, like Wolverhampton, small cities in the UK, I'm giving you examples so you can relate to them, would have more of a population in them than the entire Arabian Peninsula in the Prophet's time. Now, you can imagine why I'm saying this is to understand that, look, with people, Islam came with the flexibility to not only incorporate these people, but their backgrounds, their perspectives, their needs. Islam did not come just as a, be like us, or you force yourself. The bed of Procrustes, that every person must fit in this bed, just cut his feet off or cut whatever off to make him fit. It's not like that. If it came for the whole of mankind, it came to facilitate for their understanding. So don't try to narrow. It's like in the hadith of the Prophet where he said to the person who tried to say something, no, it should be like this. He said, لَقَدْ ضَيَّقْتَ وَاسِعًا. The mercy of Allah is so vast and you restricted it. So people, those are some words. I hope they carry some meaning to you. If there's any questions you have, as always, feel free to reach out to me. We've really stretched today's session. I've got to hit the gym. It's going to be a late one. People, take very good care of yourselves. Till next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.